The following episode is brought to you by Epik Workwear. If you want to find out more about the Gator freezer boots, insulated outerwear, or all other PPE workwear, visit epik.us.com. Hello and welcome to a limited time Epik Workwear podcast, Real Working People. I'm your host, Isaac Ransom, and this show is about highlighting the grit, resilience, and passion behind people who push the limits in their careers. Our first guest has an incredibly unique story. Elizabeth Ecklund has spent time as a firefighter in one of the most extreme environments on Earth, Antarctica. She's battled the elements and worked in conditions most of us can't even imagine. Now she's taken that experience to a new role, helping first responders and medical professionals as a therapist. We're going to be talking about her time in Antarctica, the wild moments, the lessons she learned, and how she's used her experience to help others. Let's jump into it.
My name is Elizabeth Ecklund. I'm currently the owner and operator of MindForge Therapy Group, which serves first responders, healthcare workers, legal workers, military, and subspecializes in women's health, entrepreneurship, PTSD, anxiety, depression, general life transitions, that kind of thing. My professional life includes working in law, firefighting, nursing, and social work. So the letters behind my name go a little something like this: IFSAC II Firefighter, Hazmat Operator, MSW, BSN, LSWAC, RN. Clearly, I enjoy school and collecting those letters. I grew up in Alaska working for my mother's legal service as a paralegal, and then left the state in 2004 with my now husband. My husband's a military service member who recently retired after 30 years of service. And I worked career fire and EMS for 5 years and did several additional years as a volunteer firefighter. I became a nurse during my time in the fire service with the intention to bridge to a paramedic. So that's how that all connects. Ultimately, all these different paths led me to social work and psychotherapy.
I want to talk a little bit about your experience as a firefighter before going to Antarctica. What drew you to that profession in the first place? What did you do stateside as a firefighter? And then we can talk about your experience in Antarctica.
I sort of fell into being a firefighter. As I mentioned before, when I was growing up, my mom had a legal service in Alaska. So the first career I had was as a legal secretary that became a paralegal. And I happened to have a really good friend who was a firefighter, and she said, well, you should come and join the fire department. And I thought, what? I had no friends other than her that were firefighters. I didn't understand the industry. I wasn't a part of it in any way. But I did know I wanted to do something completely opposite of being in a law office, 8, 10, 12 hours a day. I am very much an outdoors person. So I was looking for something to get me out of that office. And so initially I balked at the idea, but I joined a volunteer fire department. The volunteer fire department was great because it gave me a lot of the training and the insight. And then I was able to start by working in the community and determined that I did really enjoy it, which then led me to get involved in EMT classes, and then eventually go to the fire academy, because the idea was initially I really wanted to go federal because, again, my husband at the time was in the military. So for most people who don't know this, fire departments are typically difficult to get on. They're very competitive. So I knew it would help if I got what they call the International Firefighter Certification. That's the IFSAC that you hear. That's what a lot of the federal installations are going to want. And so anyway, it just worked out that my husband actually needed to go to Texas for some training. And I ended up applying for the fire academy there, went into the fire academy, and coming out, I was hired back to the department that I had been doing some EMS work with. I eventually was asked to get my paramedic, and I just happened to have money for school. So I looked into the closest community college that I could find, and they didn't happen to have a paramedic program, but they had an RN program. So, not knowing anything about nursing, I just thought, well, heck, I'll just go and get my RN, because I had a couple firefighters I worked with who were RNs who had bridged to paramedic or vice versa. So I thought, well, that's what I'll do. Not understanding at all what I was getting myself into. But ultimately, nursing school is not easy either. I went into nursing school with 40 students and I graduated with 18. So that tells you something right there.
Yeah, it's tough. My sister's an RN as
Right.
well out here in California, so she's right alongside you. But that's impressive that you got through that too.
Right. Thank you.
And speaking of the front line, I know you already talked a little bit about your interest in going to Antarctica, so I want to get to that, and we can definitely circle back to what you're doing now as a therapist. So really quick, just so I understand, did you start getting certified and licensed in social work before you went to Antarctica, or was that after?
I did. It was before. I actually had just graduated from graduate school the end of 2023. So it was the beginning of 2024 that I applied to go to Antarctica.
Wow. And so from all of your different credentials and your experience, what led you to try to jump into work in Antarctica? I mean, because it sounds like you want to help individuals, but you also have all this frontline experience. What kind of made you answer the call for that contract?
I had some friends who actually had pursued contracts in Antarctica.
Okay.
So I had heard about it back then. But I wasn't ready to go. But it was something that had always been in the back of my mind. I knew it was something I always wanted to try to do. And it just seemed like the beginning of 2024 was when I had the first opportunity. And a lot of it had to do with, also my husband and his career and the fact that now he was able to stay home. And just to be clear, I have 5 horses on my property. So I'm a horse person as well. And for anybody who's a horse person, they know leaving for any time with, having horses, that's nerve-wracking. So I had to really have some conversations with him and make sure it was okay for me to go. And that's the thing is, my husband deployed probably 4 or 5 times in, our 20 years of marriage. He's deployed quite a few times. So This was the first time for me to do a deployment. It was a total different,
Yeah, like a role reversal. That's crazy.
Right. So, it just seemed like it was the time if it was going to happen. And I applied thinking, well, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I applied, I interviewed, and I was offered a contract as an ARF firefighter. And for anyone listening who doesn't know what that means, ARF stands for Airport Rescue Firefighting. That means that when we are in Antarctica, we're responsible for the aircraft coming in and out. Any airport you go to, you've probably seen EMS or fire on the side of the airport, that kind of thing. That's exactly what we were doing in Antarctica. I was interviewed and offered the position. That was the easy part. To get to Antarctica, you have to spend months and months and months preparing the classes, passing physical qualifying exams. You have to get labs, vaccines, and multiple background checks. I also had to attend a class in Florida before I could even get to the ice. So I honestly was joking with my husband last night that I think I spent more time preparing for my contract than actually fulfilling my contract.
Oh, man.
So it's intense from the minute you find out that you've been hired. After you go through all of that and you finally get your airline tickets that they issue you to go, you are flown from your home to New Zealand. And then from there, you are flown to the South Island, to Christchurch, New Zealand, which is where you would go to the Christchurch International Antarctic Center. That's where you get the famous big red coat that we recognize Antarctic, USAP participants in. And that's where you then get on a military plane to be flown to Antarctica. And the funny part about this was that getting on the plane in Christchurch, the military plane, to go to McMurdo, I actually got on a C-17, which was run by Joint Base Lewis McChord, which happens to be 3 miles down the road from my house. So the crew that flew me from New Zealand to Antarctica was actually a crew that is basically my neighbors.
Wow.
So that was funny in itself. I went all that way to just go and fly with people that that are my neighbors.
So you're on your way to Antarctica. I do want to talk about that. What's your first impression? Where did you land in Antarctica? What did it look like? I mean, I think most people are like, is it like a foreign planet? What is that experience even like?
Sure. Okay. So, you're right. When I flew in, I initially flew into McMurdo Station. So McMurdo is on Ross Island in Antarctica. If you have like a picture of Antarctica and you look at it, it's sort of at the little bottom to the left. And it is probably the largest American base that is operated by the United States Antarctic Program. It has a population of about 1,100 people at the height of summer. So from somebody's perspective driving in, you will see what looks like a little town. You have several buildings. You have bars, believe it or not, bars, gyms, libraries, coffee shops, a church. There's a store, there's craft shops. I mean, whatever you can think of, they probably have it. And if they don't, you are generally allowed to make it. So people had clubs of every type. My favorite activity personally in McMurdo was running. And they even have a marathon series that they do out there. So I was able to participate in a 10K right around Christmas time. That it was probably about 20 degrees at that time. So, that's pretty warm for Antarctica.
Seriously. You're making me think I got to make some running shoes at this point with the company. I mean, what?
Yeah, it's a great place to run if you like hills. And I'll leave it at that. You're going to see a lot of wildlife out at McMurdo. You're going to see seals. During the summertime, you're going to start seeing like orcas, skua, which is a bird, and adelie and emperor penguins. So contrary to popular belief, though, there are no bears. There's no bears in it.
Oh.
It is a base that's about science, right? I mean, it's a part of the National Science Foundation. So as you can imagine, they also have a bunch of science facilities, which is really nice because as a participant out there, no matter what you do, where you work, you have an opportunity to witness firsthand the science that you're supporting. I personally enjoyed taking the tour at the Prairie Science Center, and there I was able to touch an ice core that was over 140,000 years old. I got to play with Mount Erebus volcanic rock. And just in case you didn't know, Mount Erebus is the southernmost active volcano on Earth. And it happens to be about 30 plus right in there miles away from McMurdo Station. It's actually a very active volcano. But what's interesting is most of the activity is within the volcano. It has a volcanic river. So we would get volcanic ash here and there, but it's not that the eruptions were happening outside of the volcano, is my understanding. It sort of happens in the volcano. So there's obviously scientists out there that are studying volcanic activity through that particular volcano. Prairie Science Center has a touch tank during a part of the year where they bring sea life out and put it in the tank, and they allow you to actually touch some of it. And then later they go out and they release it back to the wild. So it's all taken care of and protected. There's also something interesting about Antarctica that I'd potentially like to pursue in the future, they actually do have therapists that are on site. And so you have to have a certain amount of time, again, as a therapist before you probably even be qualified. And the company that has the government contract, or, the contract to be out there, is based out of Colorado. And they have a lot of experience with first responders. That's their specialty as well. And so I always pursue things from the perspective of, I want to put my feet in those shoes first, or, we can say Epik boots.
Yeah.
Before I go and try to counsel somebody or to help them through something, if I don't have any understanding of what they're going through, how can I really empathize, and how can I really understand and give them any kind of guidance? And so my thought was, if I could potentially go there and work as a firefighter, get a chance to understand the culture, see what's going on, it would also set me up for the future if I wanted to go back and work as a therapist. And so, again, I think that would give me a little bit of an edge, and also the perspective that I feel that you need to really understand what people are going through out there.
Yeah. I mean, I know more than ever, just getting out on the field, seeing where people are actually working, getting that experience is like crucial. I mean, just because I work with Epik Workwear and work for them, it's a total game changer when you go out to a job site, when you're working with the people that are actually wearing your gear. That's like part of our company mission, right? It's like, we want to be on the front line. You're a part of that, Elizabeth. We want to be with you. Personally, it's like, to the people who are making things for people working out there who have not gone out there, it's like, what are you doing? You got to get out there and experience it firsthand. Now, I didn't get the blessing to go out to Antarctica, although I was trying to figure out how I could make that happen on a company budget. But I would totally do it to just to go see and test out those boots that you said ended up working out for you.
Well, and I would say it's not a cheap trip. You probably figured that out.
Yeah.
When I was at the South Pole, I'm in this beautiful station that was built, completed in 2008. It's a very new station. And you look out the window, and just probably 300, 500 feet away, there were all these tents. There was this group of people who came in who were paying $20,000 or something crazy to get out there for a vacation, right? And here I am in my nice warm station, and I'm looking out there at these tents. And I was thinking, I think I made the right decision.
Yeah, what kind of vacation is that?
Right.
I mean, that's a different kind of adventure.
Or, it's heated, and they have amenities of some type. But still, I just thought, that is not the way that I would have wanted to come to Antarctica, and not paying that much money.
Come on, they don't have a Four Seasons there?
Not yet. Not yet.
Well, let's talk about it. I mean, I have a very limited knowledge of what I think of when I think of Antarctica, and what I see in my mind is a frozen wasteland, no animals, and definitely not a volcano. And so I just have to ask, when you got there, I mean, is it snowy year round? Are there any trees or anything like that? I mean, you're telling me there's a volcano, so I'm like,
right.
What?
No trees. But honestly, so again, I grew up in Alaska, and when I got out, I thought, well, this feels an awful lot like Alaska. It's a very dry cold. There's a lot of mountains. There's a lot of valleys. It's very, McMurdo is beautiful. McMurdo is just beautiful, mountains everywhere. Water. I mean, it's frozen when you get there, right? But you're surrounded by water. And again, it feels like you're in Alaska. It doesn't have a feel like I'm in the middle of absolutely nowhere. And maybe, again, that's for me because that's how I grew up. They also have seasonal sunlight, which means 6 months of the year it's completely sunny. And then 6 months of the year is completely dark.
Whoa.
So again, while that really threw a lot of people off, for me in Alaska, where we have daylight 12 hours during this, during the summer, it felt very natural for me. So that didn't really bother me, and I sort of knew how to handle it, right? Like I understand how to make blackout curtains and how to cover up windows and have light on at different times of the day to help with that. So Antarctica in McMurdo felt very natural to me. South Pole is quite different.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about you were at McMurdo for a while, and then you also did some time in the South Pole. This is during the same trip, right?
Right. So a couple months into my contract at McMurdo, I was offered a position at South Pole because somebody else hadn't been able to physically qualify to go. I said yes, but I didn't really know what I was saying yes to. I'll be honest about that. I said yes. And so I got out to South Pole, which most people know. South Pole is at the very bottom of the world, right? You take the globe, stick your finger at the very bottom of it. That's South Pole. So, interestingly enough, and the part that I didn't understand is that South Pole is at 9,500 feet elevation on a good day. But because of the Earth's rotation, there were times we were sitting at almost 12,000 feet. So in contrast, McMurdo is about 700 feet above sea level. To go from 700 feet to 12,000 in one day will make you sick.
Yeah.
So
geez.
To prepare for that, you are prescribed a medication that you take, a day or two before you get to the location, and then a few days after you get there. So for me, the humbling thing was I had been out running, enjoying outside McMurdo, and I get to South Pole, and now I can't even hardly walk up the stairs. I am not kidding. You get up to the top of the stairs and you pant and you stand there for a few minutes because you're dizzy. And you're like, I thought I was in good shape. I had to get in good shape to come here. So South Pole, in contrast to McMurdo, is very flat and white and nothing for the eyes to see for miles.
So this is more of the kind of the wasteland vision that I had in my head.
Exactly.
Right.
A couple of the firefighters that I traveled with were joking and said that they heard doom music when they arrived. Like that was dope. So that is a good summarization of what it's like at South Pole. Now, the weather difference is incredible too. On an average day that I was there, it was about negative 30 degrees with a negative 60 wind chill. That was pretty average. Now, again, what's funny is the cold out there is very dry. So when I came back to Washington State, I felt like it was colder here than it was there. And that's because it's very humid here. It's a very much, it's a humid cold here in Washington. So needless to say, I didn't spend a lot of time outside of the station in South Pole, other than having to work, which I clearly have to go out because I'm the airport rescue firefighter. But otherwise, everything is mostly contained in that 2-level facility. And even the storage units and the power plant is partially underground. South Pole is a different experience than McMurdo. You have, on average in the summer, about 150 people. So 150 people to 1,100 people. Scott Base is a small community, but I love that. It was one of my favorite things about that station is that it's a very small community. It's very close knit. So when I was getting ready to send Christmas cards to my family, I was actually able to get a lot of the community to sign my cards for my family. So my family got notes and signatures from people in all sorts of languages, right? Astrophysicists, engineers, meteorologists. In fact, one of my favorite things written on one of the cards was from the station's meteorologist who wrote in weather code the forecasts for Christmas at the pole. So if you don't know what weather code is, I highly recommend you Google it. It's pretty neat to look at. And my understanding is pilots can read it and understand it, but I don't, that's beyond my training. So
I think that would make two of us. I have no idea what weather code is. So that's awesome.
South Pole is a much newer facility. Like I said, it was built in 2008. What I find interesting about that station is South Pole is gorgeous. It has a lot of history and art on the walls. The station's very clean. It's very new. But in comparison to McMurdo, it's actually exceptionally dangerous.
Yeah.
That's because it's very difficult to get in and out of. We would be kept apprised of all the flights coming in and out, right? Because anytime a flight is coming in, we are stationed on the runway, the skiway, the big ice patch, for the plane to come in. And so we could get scheduled 12 flights a week, and yet we might get 2 if we're lucky. NASA's commented that it's actually easier to get to the International Space Station than it is the South Pole. I don't know how true that is, but I can attest to you that it is very difficult to get there by plane. And as you can imagine, they're very cautious about those flights, right? If anything is remotely off, wrong, anything on that plane, they do not fly, right?
And the only way to get to the South Pole is by plane, right? There's nobody's doing any sort of like trucking or anything like that.
And on average, well, there is a group called the SPOT team.
Okay.
Otherwise known as the South Pole Overland Traverse Team. And so they drive from McMurdo to South Pole. And that's a 30-day trip. They actually did that trip while I was there. I was there and I saw the people at McMurdo, then got to South Pole and saw the same people 30 days later.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really
and that's a whole, that would be somebody to have an interview with, because that's a whole nother thing. They've got to like carry explosives to like clear parts of I don't even know if we'd call it a road. They got to clear the wilderness so that they can get through. But anyway, and you mentioned somebody working on a plane earlier, and the plane that we do fly out there on is the C-130. You can take a Basler as well, which is like the old World War II planes. But it's the C-130 that is the most common plane that is going to fly out there. You also might see some Twin Otters. But for the most part, the C-130 is what we're flying in and out of. And that's the plane that has the skis on it. And I will tell you, that was the plane that gave me the biggest anxiety in my life when I first saw a picture of it, because all I can imagine is that plane going sideways with landing and, skiing all over the place, which is not true, but I didn't know.
That's right. It's the C-130. I think I misspoke earlier and said that my cousin worked on H-130s, which is a helicopter. I've never seen one with the skis, but I live near Moffett Field in California, which is a NASA base, and they're always flying the C-130s over, but they do not have skis for landing.
Right.
So,
for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about your work. Obviously, we connected because you were wearing Epik Workwear's Gator boot, which is our insulated freezer boot, and you loved them. You said they're great. So I'm glad that they worked for you in such an extreme environment. As a matter of fact, as a team, when you told us about that, we were like, wow, we can't even believe that these boots have been to the South Pole or, all the way to McMurdo Station. Is amazing to us. You're out there in that freezing temperature. You're on, these different airfields and things like that. What does a normal day look like? Do you have any crazy stories about being on the job and working in those boots?
Sure. So normal or typical is probably not a word I would associate with Antarctica.
Right.
So McMurdo work as a firefighter is very different than work as a firefighter at South Pole. And I did bring my boots, so everybody can see I have my boots. They look very clean. I know we kind of preemptively talked about that, and that's because going through customs to go to New Zealand is very particular about soil on your boots, so I had to clean them in order to bring them home. But yeah, these boots have seen both South Pole and McMurdo, Antarctica, and I had a really good time in them. Working at McMurdo, there is a fire station. You work generally a 48 on, 48 off. And what that means is that when it's your time to work, you either work in town or you work out at Phoenix Airfield or Willys Airfield, which are different airfields that are open during different times of the year. And Phoenix Airfield is the big airfield where we have a lot of international visitors. We have a lot of people coming in from other countries. They will come in and then fly to their other station. So, for example, there's the French base. It's called, I will butcher the name if I try to say it in French, but they refer to it as DDU. And so there's a lot of different ethnicities, people coming in. So it's really interesting because you get to meet all their scientists and that kind of thing too. But ultimately, when we're out at the airfield, we are wearing our our gator boots to be out to like clear off ice and snow off the equipment. The equipment there is completely different than you would see anywhere in the world. We have tracked vehicles. We also have what we call pods that contain the foam that we use for in the case of an accident. If the plane was to catch on fire, we would then be using the foam on, the airplane, that kind of thing. So a lot of times with the work we're doing out there, we are out in the environment, right? It's very extreme in that sense. And we are basically outside for many, many hours, going in and out, working with the planes coming in, working with people coming in and out. We provide medical coverage out on the airfield, that kind of thing. So that's what it's like at McMurdo. South Pole is different. Our only job out at South Pole is to do the airport rescue firefighting, which means we are in charge of those planes coming in and out. That's our main job. So again, a lot of it is dealing with equipment in very, very harsh climate. We would take turns going to check out our pods a lot of times in the morning. And so I have several videos where I have just walked outside, it is again, -40 degrees out, and I'm going out to check equipment. And that's what I'm doing. And that's what I'm doing in my boots. And then on top of that, we would conduct a lot of fire inspections, right? So we're going to the different facilities. We're going to the telescope. We're going to the science stuff happening like Ice Cube, where they're drilling for neutrinos. And we're checking out those areas to make sure that they're safe, again, from a fire perspective. And a lot of times we're going under the station because there's a lot under the station, like I mentioned before. There's the power plant is one of the most notable things I think about at South Pole, because you have these little chimneys coming out of the ground and you see the smoke. But what it is it's coming from the power plant, which again is under the ground.
Yeah.
Well, what is super important when it comes to equipment and why these boots are actually incredibly important to us is boots will freeze, right? You will go outside and the whole sole will freeze. Well, the problem that causes is that people will fall. Under the station specifically, very, very slippery. Lots of ice, right? And so if you are not wearing the right boot versus like the tread, or it's freezing, different things like that, you are going to fall. And you don't want to fall. You don't want to fall because, again, we're at South Pole. We don't have the ability to get higher level medical care instantaneously, right? Even it's so much worse at South Pole than it is even at McMurdo. McMurdo, you could probably easily get a flight out a day or two, right? Weather can cause some problems, but mostly you can get somebody out. South Pole is not that way. So your equipment is potentially going to save your life. That's why it's important to have equipment that really works for you and the environment, right? So the Gator boots were recommended by a firefighter who had several seasons in. The boots that they had actually put on our equipment list, where they were recommending this is what you buy. Several firefighters had come and said, don't buy those because the soles will freeze. And when the soles freeze, you're basically skating around on those boots.
Yeah.
So I never had any issues with the Gator boots. I had no problems at all. There were a couple times that it was slippery and I don't care what boot you're wearing, you're going to slip. But I never fell. I never had the boot freeze. I never had my feet froze. I mean, I had no issues. So I know that they were a popular boot. They were a favorite. And there were a lot of people who didn't get those boots they were trying to get those boots. And I remember one guy was sharing his boots with another guy just to try to see what the fit feels like, for sizing. So I know that people who didn't get the boot were wanting to get the boot. So it wouldn't surprise me if you guys had got some orders after the fact, like after they were.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. And I'm sorry we don't do shipping to the South Pole. I don't know how we do it with an airdrop or something.
Well, just so you know, you can actually send things priority mail, U.S. priority mail.
All right.
It's an APO. It's an APO address, just like if you were in the military and you were across seas, you can actually ship that way. So in the future.
I know. Yeah. Well, we're definitely going to have to look at that. I think that would be a huge opportunity for sure. Well, that's amazing. Do you have any like crazy stories or funny stories about your experience working over there? And then I want to try to transition the conversation away from Antarctica and talk a little bit about your experience with therapy. I'd love to hear, any notable memories. I mean, it's such a wild environment, like any funny stories or anything like that.
Absolutely. I was going to say it actually ties perfectly into what we were just talking about. One of the funniest stories I have is it has to do with the mail. So believe it or not, you can get mail in Antarctica. In fact, what most people will tell you is if you want to get something quick, you order it from Amazon. Amazon will ship you within probably about 3 weeks. It's actually a pretty quick time frame. But what they don't tell you is that you want to make sure when you order something from Amazon, it comes in like the little white and blue soft-sided mailer, not a box. Because they ship things, it's much easier to put those little soft-sided or envelopes, things like that, on the cargo plane than it is boxes. And they don't prioritize boxes. Right. So that means you might order something in a box and you're not going to get it for many, many months. And again, a lot of this I didn't know because I was new, things like that. So anyway, what happened was probably the first couple weeks I was in Antarctica, I started noticing that I was craving salt. Very dry. Remember this climate, right? So you're going to crave salt and you're going to crave water and you're going to feel dehydrated pretty much the entire time you're out there. So for me, as somebody who tries to eat very healthy, I don't generally eat a lot of chips and I don't eat a lot of that kind of stuff. But I found that I was craving a lot of salt. So I happened to mention this to, my mom, my dad, my sister, my husband, just pretty much all my friends, that kind of thing. So it just so happened that my birthday was in November. We have Thanksgiving, we have Christmas and all that coming up. So my family, not all together, but different individuals all decided to order me snacks, to order me chips and whatever. And so anyway, the mail is not quick. I went for McMurdo. I didn't receive anything. Everybody was like, did you get it? Did you get it? Did you get it? I said, no, I didn't get anything. I go to South Pole. Everyone's like, did you get it? Did you get it? Did you get it? I said, well, the mail out here is even harder to get because they don't prioritize the mail. They prioritize, our food and our supplies that we need and the science. Right? So anyway, after South Pole, I went back to McMurdo, and my family was still like, "Did you get anything? Did you get anything? Did you get?" I said, "No, I haven't gotten anything." And I said, "I don't know." Of course, nobody knows what's happening, right? And so, anyway, it turns out the day, and I am not joking, the day that I am getting ready to leave, I go to what they call, it's building 140. It happens to have our cargo, it has our mail room, it has things like that. You have to go there when you're getting ready to leave to bring your gear, to get weighed, to get all that stuff so you can fly out. And then they take your luggage and they put it on pallets and, so I get there and the mail clerk comes out to me as I'm weighing and getting ready to put all my stuff, hand it to the cargo. And she says, "You have mail." And I said, "Oh, okay. And she's like, "No, you don't understand. You have more mail than I have ever seen anybody ever receive in Antarctica."
That's awesome.
And on top of that, she said, "Your mail not only was here at McMurdo, it went to South Pole. It went to South Pole on the same flight that I left on. So it went to South Pole and then it came back to McMurdo." And then she rolls out. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those large carts that they use for in the grocery stores. Sometimes they use them to put stuff on the shelf.
Yeah.
He rolls this huge cart out. It is stacked with 12 boxes. And I'm not talking little boxes. I'm talking the biggest box that you have to wrap your arms around, and they say snacks. Dorito, what is it? Frito-Lay or something? Their boxes are marked snacks. I have 12 boxes of snacks. And so, of course, I was like, what am I going to do with this? I finally, everything shows up and I'm leaving. And so, of course, the nice thing was, this was close to Christmas, right?
Yeah.
So I was able to take all of that and part it out. But you also have to remember, when you're in Antarctica, everything is so valuable because there is no toothpaste. I remember this poor man running around trying to find toothpaste one day and he couldn't get it, not even at the store. So I happened to have extra. I gave him. But there's such a scarcity mindset because you're like, I cannot get this stuff. I cannot get my favorite snacks, or I can't get, whatever it is. And so everything is valuable. And I was able to give all these snacks away, made a lot of people's day, right? The fire department, I brought a whole bunch over, that kind of thing. But I will never forget that. And I did give the poor mail clerk a tin of popcorn that my mom had sent me. And I was like, I love that my mom said this to me. But again, I wasn't going to get to enjoy it. I only get 100 pounds. I get to haul back and forth, intercontinent. So I couldn't really take it, but I was sad at the time because I felt like I will never get a chip. I'm never going to get these chips. But of course, the minute I got back to New Zealand, I was able to buy chips. And
there you go. Oh, man. And I'm sure in a way it's sort of a blessing for everybody there that you didn't find it until the last moment. You could be like Santa Claus for all of Antarctica for a second. Yeah.
Well, Dan, I have pictures of that day and the fact that I had that cart full of these packages and the one counter in the mailroom completely covered with packages of snacks. So I have receipts. It's really funny.
That's awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about kind of your current drive to offer therapy to people working in these different job environments. I guess kind of a last closing question on Antarctica, but how do you think the extreme conditions kind of have impacted your life today, like these experiences, and what do you take from this kind of adventure into your advice and your help as a therapist?
Well, that's a really long question.
I know. Okay. It's too large. I would say maybe some of the things that you were already talking about, sort of being in people's shoes. And I know that you're mentioning also that, there are therapists in Antarctica that offer that service, but You've done so many different things. You've seen kind of all these different adventures and experiences. How does that change the way that you sort of act as a therapist and work with people as they're going through these different jobs?
I don't know that it changes how I help people as much as it gives me a little bit more insight as to what they are going through. And I think insight and empathy go well together. And as a therapist, it's important to be able to empathize with your client, right? So I can understand what you're going through and I can help you through it. But if I don't know what you've actually had to go through, if I've not experienced that, it makes it difficult for me to empathize with you.
Yeah. What do you think some of the largest challenges that first responders are facing when it comes to mental health?
I think some of the biggest challenges that we have is, again, not having resources to help us when we are having issues with our mental health. Also, not having access, not being aware of the resources, right? And also, for any healthcare provider I've ever worked with, myself included, we have a real aversion to taking care of ourselves, right? We are all about helping other people. So a big problem that I find too is that a lot of my clients, they wait to get help when it's a little bit too late, right? Or they're really into something that is extremely deep. And again, a part of that is as a mindset, for example, as a firefighter, right? We are trying to be very tough. We're trying to not feel like we need help. We don't want to be the one that needs to be rescued, right? So it's difficult to ask for that help to begin with. And again, this is where I say it really comes in handy to have a provider who can work with you, who understands that mentality. And for me, what I do and how I get around that with a lot of my clients is I will do a lot of the interventions that they require without making it feel like they're in therapy, if that makes sense. I kind of sneak those interventions in because if you are sitting there feeling like somebody is judging you or isn't understanding where you're coming from, you have a tendency to shut down, right? So again, the population I work with, they do not want to feel like a victim. And unfortunately, this career, this field we've chosen, whether or not it's in Antarctica or not, is very, very challenging. It's very, very challenging. And it's very trying on us both mentally and physically. And a lot of times we don't realize it until, it's really, really daunting on us. So
yeah. I think I know people that work as first responders. I know people in medical. I know people in military. What's something that you can give them right now in terms of like a resource or somewhere to look? If they are feeling an urge, like maybe there's a step what's a baby step that I can take right now if this is something that I want to stay on top of?
Sure. I would say the easiest, quickest response to that is to go to someplace like Psychology Today and look up a provider in your area and look at their credentials and see if they will be a fit. A lot of times, first responder clinicians will say that that's the population they work with. That's their niche. So that's something they can do. And I also recommend that they try out a couple therapists. They may not fit with the first person that they come across. So it's important to screen them, right? We're going to be building a relationship when we're in a client-therapist, relationship here. So you want to make sure the relationship is a good fit. It feels good. It feels natural. You're not going to want to pour out your heart to somebody that you don't feel comfortable with. That just makes sense.
Yeah. What's your response to somebody who might be skeptical of taking that step for their health?
That's reasonable to be skeptical, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with being skeptical. I think, though, just like anything else, you can look at it as a potential tool. And I just say, try it, right? Be skeptical. That's natural. And I recommend that. But still give it a shot. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work for you. Again, I would recommend that you try a couple therapists before making the decision that it's not going to work for you. I would say I've had quite a few first-time therapy clients, meaning they've never had therapy before they came and worked with me. And so I've had a lot of positive comments, things along the lines of, this isn't what I thought therapy would be. And that's a pretty common response, right? I think the media portrays therapy one way, and that's not necessarily the truth. So it can be a turnoff, but then a lot of times people who actually try therapy find that they actually have a positive response to it. They weren't expecting.
I love it. I'm putting you on the spot, Elizabeth. I love it. Where can people find information about you, or if they want to get connected to find resources, how could they get a hold of you?
Sure. So I also have a Psychology Today profile page. I also am partnered with a company called Mindful Therapy. They do all of my administration. So with Mindful Therapy Group, they have a website as well where you can find my information, and they have self-scheduling, which means if somebody actually wanted to meet with me, they can look and see what my availability is like, click that button, go through the process, and they can have a session with me.
Awesome. Any other final last words or thoughts on therapy or your experience out on the field?
I would just say that as far as working in the demanding environments, a place like Antarctica, really lean on your community and individuals before you've tackled the environment. I never felt unprepared going to Antarctica. And that's because the National Science Foundation and the USAP provide classes, had lots of friends, I had family, I had coworkers who had experienced the environment before me. And so again, that's how I learned about the Epik boot, was another firefighter who had done 6 seasons. So I just say it's really important to do your homework and prepare. Just prepare, use your friends, your community to get ready for something like that. And make sure you got the correct gear in the environment you're going to be working in, because it can literally save your life.
I love that. It's awesome. Elizabeth, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you for sharing your stories, your experience, even your wisdom with the people listening. To all of you who are grinding out every day on the toughest jobs, make sure that you stay safe, strong, and keep doing epic work. Until next episode, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you then. If you want to find out more about the Gator freezer boots, insulated outerwear, or all other PPE workwear, visit epik.us.com.